Okay, today I will be doing a video on this Ti-85 graphing calculator, which you see here. Yeah, this type of graphing calculator was very popular back in the 1990s. A lot of people who majored in science and engineering majors use this type of calculator back in college. I used this when I was going to university back in 1994. And there were other models of Texas Instrument graphing calculators, like the Ti-80. I don't remember exactly. Let me look it up. Ti-84. Yeah, it was called a Ti-84 graphing calculator. And Ti-83, let me see. Yes, they have the Ti-83 graphing calculator as well. I think I had the one that came before this one. Yeah, it was a Ti-82. That's the one that I used. I'll show you on the screen. That one. I had that one as well. And this one, like I said, I used during college, and it's very. Let me turn on the light so you can see it better. This room is very dark. I just opened the curtains in this room, but I guess the light isn't adequate because today is it's a very cloudy day. And, yeah, this I don't know if you could see that or not, if it's working. See that? So in order to graph with this calculator, it is called a graphing calculator after all. So you would press this button, graph. You'd come out with that function with this, and if you want to graph, then you press F1, which it says y to the x. That's like a function for graphing. Let me clear this, change it. Let's say the graph was y equals x, and then I want to do another graph. I press enter right there, and then I can have a second graph. So let's say that graph is 2 to the x, 2x. So y equals 2x, and press enter again. Let's say the next graph I want negative 2x, and then I press. No, I don't press enter now. I press graph if I want to graph. And then I come up with this, and then you press this to graph. And these calculators were programmable as well, these graphing calculators. The instruction manuals are, if I want to go back to functions, just press F1. And these things were also programmable. And this big, thick book showed you how to program this graphing calculator. I think there was a game in this book right here that I used to program a game. I think it was a basketball game using projectile motion. Let me look it up.
And there were some people who programmed games for these.
graphing calculators back in the day. Some of my friends were able to program games, simple games. So this was a time when they had Game Boys as portable game systems. Shoot. I know it's in here somewhere. See, this is how you program. This is a sample program for programming for this graphing calculator. Let me look it up. It shows you how to program as well. So this is kind of like a mini, like a small portable computer or something. So this is I think this is integral calculus or something. This is logarithms. You can do all kinds of math functions with this graphing calculator. So if you want to graph an integral like this, you can on your graphing calculator. It does integral functions. It does that's integral calculus. It also does you can graph trigonometry functions like sine, cosine, and tangent as well. So this is another program. It's called Sierpinski's triangle. It's right there. Managing memory. This thing didn't have a lot of memory. I know that. Probably the memory wasn't in megabytes. I think it was more like in kilobytes of data which it could store. I'm not sure how much RAM this thing could store, but I can bet that it wasn't very much. Ti-85 memory. How much memory did this thing have? User memory was 28 kilobytes of RAM. That's not even a megabyte. So back in the day, what we used to do is in college or university was that okay, to turn it off you press shift and right here off. So on is right here, you just press that, and off is here. So back in the day when we used to go to college and stuff, we had graphing calculators. We were allowed to use graphing calculators in tests, you know, in classes like chemistry, physics, math classes like calculus, linear algebra, differential equations. So what we would do is we would store stuff in here and kind of like cheat, you know, stuff we can't remember. You were able to store stuff in this. I forgot how to do it. It was a long time ago, you know. I don't. How do you store stuff in here? What is this? Mode. Float. I think float is decimals or something. Float point. So you have a radian, degree. So in radians, let's see, 360 degrees in radians is 2 pi, and 180 degrees in radians is pi, and yeah, that's what radians is. I don't know what that is. Functions. We also have differential equations. it's a pretty powerful machine. I mean, it didn't have a lot of memory capability. Nevertheless, it was pretty powerful. So if I want to quit, I just go there. Forgot how to store, man. It's been such a long time. It's been over 25 years. Let me see how many years this was. Been 25 years since I used it. So let me try to do another graph. I'm going to go back to functions. Let's do another graph. I'm going to try cosine of x. So that would be a cosine graph, a trigonometric graph. I'm going to go back. That's not what I want to go back to functions. I want to put 5 cosine of 2x. No, just x. So now the amplitude will be 5 for this, and let me graph that. So the amplitude is going to be bigger. But before it wasn't, the graph wasn't very big. So I'm going to do the next one. Let's put 5 cosine of 2x. Try that. See how long it takes to graph? It's not that powerful or anything. This graph has a bit. Next graph has a higher frequency, as you can see in the first one. So we learned how to graph stuff on this. I mean, we use this as a tool to graph when we did math and science courses like trigonometry and stuff like that. So this was pretty useful for us, you know, when we were going to college and learning advanced mathematics and physics and stuff like that. I guess it was also very useful for students who were studying trigonometry and algebra, because you had to do a lot of graphing in those types of math classes as well. And of course it was useful in calculus and stuff like that. And yeah, it was pretty useful, and we were able to store stuff in here, and that was I kind of like used it as my personal organizer as well when I was going to, when I had this thing. Not only did I use it for math classes, I like stored stuff in here, like kind of like my schedule, you know. It was kind of like a primitive assistant or something, you know. But yeah, so let me show you the inside of this thing. So let's see. So this uses 4 AAA batteries, which you can see right here. And I don't have, well, this is called this is some kind of button cell lithium battery, which I took out of here. It's a CR1616 button cell battery. I mean, this one obviously doesn't work. It's probably dead by now. So this is what was used to enable you to save stuff, because the chips in this are called ROM chips. So they're called read-only memory chips. And back in the day when we didn't have like NAND memories like used in flash drives and stuff like that, we were only able to store information if the power didn't get shut off. So let's say a game like Zelda, right? That was the first type of video game that a lot of Generation Xers used to play back in 1986 when it was released, and that game also had a ROM cartridge. You know, it was a ROM cartridge, and you were able to save the game because it had a battery like this in it. So yeah, the even today, I mean, even on your modern motherboards, they also have ROM, you know, BIOS ROMs, and they also have lithium batteries that you put into the motherboard, and this enables you to save your BIOS. It's the same concept with this, and that's how you were able to store data with this thing, with the ROM, with the raw memory. So it came with this container right here, and you were able to protect it from damage. Let's say if you dropped it, and it had this data cable, I think, so you were able to connect this to another graphing calculator like this, and you were able to like transmit data to another graphing calculator using this cable. And this calculator and others like it, other models like it, did come with this cable, data cable. So it was a quite advanced piece of technology in the day. You know, it's better than trying to graph something, you know, on hand by using a graphing paper. It took a lot of time, and this helped us a lot, you know, make graphs, and it was useful. And it was also useful in doing advanced math functions. You know, before we had electronic calculators, we had to use you had to use slide rules to make logarithmic calculations and stuff like that. So during the electronic age, there was no need to use a slide rule. You know, we could just use something like this, and it was pretty yeah. So this is how people used to this is the kind of stuff that we used to do math back in the day. So the processor in this thing is called a Zilog Z80. That's the processor, and the maximum screen resolution for this graphing calculator was, I think it was 128 by 64 pixels, or 21 by 8 characters. So the resolution wasn't very good, and this thing was produced from 1992 to 1997, and I got mine in 1994 from what I remember. And the frequency or speed of this processor, the Zilog Z80, was 6 megahertz. So it was pretty by today's standards, it was very primitive, right? I don't know if this thing used the same processor as the Nintendo Entertainment System. I do recall that let me see, Nintendo, let's see, Nintendo 8-bit. See what this Zilog 80 processor was used in. It was an 8-bit processor. It was not that powerful, of course, but it was actually, it says right here, it was used, the Z80 was used on desktop computers during the late 1970s and early 1980s. used on a computer desktop computer back in the late 70s and 80s, and used on something as small as this in the early 1990s. Yeah, it was used on let's see. It was used on the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, which was a very popular computer in the United Kingdom back in the early 1980s. So it was actually used on computers. Okay, so it is. So this thing is essentially a computer, pretty much. And yeah, that's. I didn't say that it was used in a wait. The Z80 was also used in Sega Master System and Game Gear consoles. Game Gear was a colored portable game system that Sega released back in the early 90s, right? So yes, it was used in video game consoles as well. So it was a pretty popular and inexpensive CPU, central processing unit, and yeah, so I guess it was kind of like a computer. So anyways, thanks for watching by Ace 1000 KS 1975.